Stop for a moment and picture this. One small swab, 90 seconds in a private clinic, a single sealed envelope. That is all it would take to silence the largest royal scandal of the modern era, to bury every whisper, to drown every theory, and to send every critic into permanent retreat. And yet, the one man on this earth with the power to end it all absolutely refuses to walk into that room. Why? That is the question you need to hold in your mind for the next several minutes, because what you are about to hear will change the way you look at the House of Windsor forever. Picture the British monarchy as a cathedral, a structure so ancient, so intricate, so weighed down by the dust of 1,000 years that its survival feels almost supernatural. It has outlived plagues that emptied entire cities. It has outlived civil wars that drenched English soil in blood. It has outlived the rise and fall of empires that once stretched across every continent on the globe. It has survived beheadings, bombings, abdications, and betrayals that would have shattered any other institution on the planet. And yet here we are, in the spring of 2026, staring at the very real possibility that this 1,000-year-old cathedral is now held together by a single fragile thread. Not a war, not a revolution, not even a financial collapse, something far more intimate, far more uncomfortable, and far more dangerous. The greatest threat to the crown today is a question of biology. Say that out loud, a question of biology. And it is a question that Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have spent years of their lives, tens of millions of their dollars, and every ounce of their legal firepower desperately trying to outrun. You, sitting there watching this right now, are about to see exactly why they can no longer outrun it, because the walls of the maze they built are finally closing in. For centuries, the royal line of succession has rested on a principle so old-fashioned that it sounds like something pulled from a medieval scroll. The principle is transparency. Complete, uncomfortable, almost invasive transparency. The future monarch must be born of the body, not adopted, not implied, not metaphorical. Born, literally, of the body of the mother, with the whole world watching, witnesses at the door, and documentation stamped into the public record. That is not a suggestion. That is the law of the land. And as the world watches the Sussexes retreat deeper and deeper into their sun-bleached California fortress, that ancient foundation is starting to crack in ways that British royal commentators have never seen before. Here is where it gets interesting. The whispers that used to live only in the darkest corners of the internet, the theories that respectable journalists wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole, have now walked straight into mainstream editorial offices. Seasoned royal experts, people with decades of access to the palace, people who once defended Harry and Meghan loudly and proudly, are now asking questions in print, questions about timelines, questions about births, questions about bodies, questions about documents that should exist and mysteriously do not. And this, let me be clear, is no longer just a family feud. It has evolved into a high-stakes chess match where the prize on the board is the very legitimacy of the throne. Keep listening, because everything I am about to walk you through is the exact reason the palace is preparing for what insiders are calling the most consequential royal decision since the abdication of Edward VIII in 1936. Let us begin with the silence. Because the silence is where this entire storm truly took shape. When the Sussex wedding anniversary rolled around just a few short weeks ago, something extraordinary happened. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. In years past, a Sussex anniversary was a global media event. You remember those days. Glossy tributes, carefully timed photo leaks, a unified flood of hashtags. A perfectly choreographed public relations dance that even the most critical tabloids were forced to engage with. That was the old playbook. That was the Sussex machine at full throttle. But this time, the playbook was thrown into the fire. No public message from King Charles, no warm note from the Prince and Princess of Wales. Not even, and this is the part that stunned the industry, a single peep from Harry and Meghan themselves. No Instagram tribute, no podcast nod, no soft focus throwback photograph, nothing. The silence was so complete that it stopped feeling like dignity and started feeling like evacuation. Like a couple quietly packing their bags as the hotel burns down around them. Meghan, who has always navigated the modern media landscape like a chess grandmaster seeing 7 moves ahead, stayed completely out of the frame. No strategic interview, no coy appearance, no polished essay on her website. She vanished. And Harry, once described by British newspapers as the most popular man in the country, looked less like a prince on his anniversary and more like a man trapped in a cul-de-sac of his own design. The world did not give them privacy. Let us be precise about this. The world gave them something far worse. The world gave them indifference, and in the celebrity economy, indifference is a death sentence. But here is where the story takes its first sharp turn, and you need to stay with me because this is the part most people got completely wrong. While the public stared at the silence and tried to decode it, a plan was quietly being constructed behind the scenes. A faux-royal tour of Australia. Let me say that phrase again so you feel the weight of it. A faux-royal tour, not a real one, not an official one, not one blessed by the crown or coordinated by the Foreign Office. A branded imitation, a performance of royalty without the permission of the palace. Many analysts are calling it the most desperate relevance grab of the Sussexes' entire post-royal career, a last-ditch attempt to stay visible as their official ties to the monarchy are being systematically, surgically, methodically dismantled back home. And that dismantling, let me be blunt with you, is no longer hypothetical. It is happening in real time. The atmosphere inside the palace shifted permanently in late 2025 when King Charles did the one thing every royal watcher thought he would never have the stomach to do. He initiated the formal process to strip the style and titles from his own brother, Prince Andrew. Read that sentence again if you need to, because it changes everything that follows. A sitting monarch, in the twilight years of his reign, a man famously averse to conflict, publicly and procedurally moved to remove the Royal Highness status and the titular dignity of his own sibling. The message coming out of Buckingham Palace was immediate and unmistakable. No one, absolutely no one, is untouchable anymore. The precedent was set in stone the moment that decision became public. And if the second son of a queen could be stripped of his royal dignity, what exactly did that mean for another son? One who had effectively resigned from duty, one who had packed up his family and crossed the Atlantic, one who had spent years selling the crown's secrets to streaming services for profit. The Andrew precedent, as it has come to be called, is now the dark shadow hanging over every single move Harry and Meghan make in 2026. It proves something the Sussexes never wanted to admit. The crown is no longer interested in waiting things out. The patience that defined Queen Elizabeth II's reign has completely evaporated. In its place is a clinical, legalistic, almost surgical approach to protecting the institution at any cost. And it was inside this boiling climate of strategic uncertainty that a woman named Angela Levin decided to pull the pin on the biggest grenade of her career. Pay attention to this next part, because it changes everything. Angela Levin is not some random commentator shouting into the void of social media. Angela Levin is a veteran, a woman who has spent literal decades inside the royal orbit, a biographer who has sat down with senior royals, a writer whose phone still rings when the palace wants something said, without wanting to say it themselves. When Angela Levin speaks on a royal topic, the British establishment stops and listens. And recently, she stopped hinting, she stopped dancing, she stopped couching her words in diplomatic softness. She started demanding answers. Levin put into the open air the one subject the Sussexes have spent every waking hour trying to keep hidden: the legal legitimacy of Archie and Lilibet. Now let me slow down here because a lot of viewers misunderstand exactly what that phrase means. The British Constitution is extraordinarily specific about who may one day sit on the throne. The requirement, in plain language, is that the child must be born of the body of the mother, not a technicality, not a figure of speech. A biological, legal, evidentiary requirement that has underwritten every single royal birth for centuries. What Levin raised, and what she had the courage to raise publicly, was not tabloid gossip about handbags or tiaras. It was a direct question about the legal status of the royal line of succession itself. She pointed out something that no serious royal commentator had dared to verbalize before. The doctor's signatures, those traditional, ceremonial, handwritten signatures that have graced the palace easel after every modern royal birth, were conspicuously missing. The birth announcements, which are normally issued with the precision of a military operation, were delayed, muddled, and in some cases, flat out contradicted by different sources in different countries. The hospital, the city, the timeline, the details of the attending medical team, all of it was fogged over in a way that simply does not happen when the crown is involved. And Levin asked the question that now sits like a stone in the throat of every royal correspondent. If there is even a shred of doubt about the biological origins of these children, then their positions in the royal order of succession are not just at risk. They may be, under the strictest reading of British constitutional law, legally void. Let that word land for a moment. Void. Not debated, not disputed, void. To understand why this revelation hit the British establishment like a thunderclap, you need to understand the sacred ritual of the royal birth. Travel back with me for a moment. Picture the steps of the Lindo wing of St. Mary's Hospital in London. Picture Princess Diana stepping out into the cold summer air in 1982, hours after giving birth to a tiny Prince William, the world's cameras flashing, the future king cradled in her arms, the line of succession secured in a single photograph. Picture Kate Middleton decades later doing exactly the same thing, smiling through the exhaustion of labor, presenting her children to the world on those same iconic steps, one after the other, with near military punctuality. That is not vanity, that is not performance, that is constitutional function. That ritual, uncomfortable as it is, serves a vital purpose that most casual observers never stop to consider. It provides the public with the visual, medical, and evidentiary assurance that the line of succession is secure and biologically verified. For generations before the Lindo wing, the Home Secretary of the United Kingdom was actually required to be physically present in the birthing room to verify with his own eyes that the child emerging from the mother was indeed the child being added to the royal line. Let that sink in. A cabinet minister stationed at the bedside. That is how seriously the British state has historically treated this question. The Home Secretary rule was eventually modernized, yes, but the spirit, the transparency, the public accountability of a royal birth, that all remained untouched. And then Meghan arrived, and the entire script, a script written in the ink of 1,000 years of precedent, was tossed straight into the shredder. There were no hospital steps. There were no clear medical bulletins. There were no attending physicians stepping forward to lend their names to the record. There were instead a series of conflicting and utterly confusing reports about when and where the births actually took place. Some sources said one hospital, other sources said another. Still others claimed a home birth. One statement said water birth. Another said something entirely different. This was not privacy. This was not the shy reluctance of new parents. This was a total, calculated, strategic blackout of information in a matter where information has been a legal requirement for centuries. And that blackout, that fog, is exactly the conditions in which conspiracy theories thrive. Here is the part that nobody wants to admit out loud. As the accusations began to surface, the so-called moon bump theories, ideas that had once been exiled to the darkest and most disreputable corners of internet message boards, started to get whispered about in editorial meetings at major newsrooms. Viewers began stitching together video clips. They noticed the way Meghan's pregnancy silhouette seemed to shift inconsistently from appearance to appearance, growing dramatically on some days and shrinking on others. They noticed the impossible ease with which she could squat in towering high heels while supposedly 8 months pregnant. They replayed carpet events and compared them to clips from private settings. And while Harry from across the ocean dismissed every question as cruel, racist, and driven by hatred, the refusal to provide a single traditional birth announcement created exactly the vacuum in which these theories could multiply without limit. Because here is the uncomfortable truth about the royal world. In the royal world, secrecy is the enemy of legitimacy. That is not opinion. That is a 400-year-old operating rule of the institution. By choosing to do things their way, by choosing the Hollywood script over the constitutional one, Harry and Meghan have inadvertently opened a door that now cannot be closed without evidence. If those births did not follow the born of the body protocol enshrined in British law, then under the current legal framework, those children cannot inherit the titles of prince and princess, cannot inherit a place in the line of succession, cannot claim the dignities that the palace reluctantly granted them. Full stop. And that, viewer, is a problem that no Netflix special and no Oprah interview can polish away. But here is where the mystery deepens into something almost spooky, because the questions do not stop at the hospital room. In 2026, the entire world, not just royal watchers, is asking a much more unsettling question. Where, exactly, are the children? Think about this for a moment. Really think. Prince William and Princess Catherine's 3 children, George, Charlotte, and Louis, are seen regularly. They appear at national events. They turn up at Trooping the Color in coordinated outfits. They attend Christmas services at Sandringham. They are photographed on school runs. They are growing up, visibly, in the public eye, with a clear sense of duty and a palpable emotional connection to the British people. Archie and Lilibet, meanwhile, have become something else entirely. They have become the invisible children. Aside from a handful of grainy, high-contrast photographs and a few carefully edited Netflix clips where their faces are obscured or softened in ways that suggest heavy editorial control, the world has not actually seen them. Not truly. Not in the way you or I have seen virtually every other royal child of this century. This is not privacy. Let us stop pretending. This is a total withdrawal from the public sphere, and it feels deeply unnatural for a family claiming royal status while simultaneously refusing to perform the single most basic royal function, which is to be seen. When a child is in the royal line of succession, they are not merely private citizens with a famous last name. They are part of the future of the state. They are, in a very real sense, future assets of the nation. By keeping them hidden, by shielding them from even the most benign forms of public acknowledgement, Harry and Meghan have not just protected them from paparazzi, they have made them the subject of intense, global, and increasingly academic speculation. The absence of normal childhood milestones in the public record has led even moderate, cautious royal watchers, people who for years gave the Sussexes the benefit of every doubt, to wonder privately if the family is hiding something far, far larger than a simple desire for a quiet suburban life. And Prince Harry's response to this mounting pressure, a pressure that would demand transparency from any other man, has been anything but calm, anything but measured, anything but strategic. Instead of stepping forward and providing the evidence that would silence his critics once and for all, which would take, again, about 5 minutes of his life, he has reached for his favorite weapon. The lawsuit. Harry has become, by a wide margin, the most litigious member of the British royal family in modern history, threatening, suing, and intimidating anyone who dares to peek behind the curtain of his carefully curated new life. Now, here is the thing about legal threats, and this is the part most commentators miss entirely. Legal threats do not project strength. Legal threats project fear. Every time Harry's attorneys file a new claim, every time his legal team issues another cease and desist letter, every time he publicly vows to take someone to court over a question or a speculation, the thoughtful observer asks the same quiet question. What is he so afraid of? If the rumors were baseless, if the moon bump theories were truly the product of racist fever dreams, then a single medical record, a single notarized statement from the attending physicians, a single transparent press briefing would end the entire conversation overnight. Instead, Harry swings wildly at the media with the wild energy of a cornered animal, looking far less like a protective father and far more like a man trying desperately to hold back a flood with a toothpick. His fury has not buried the story, it has done the exact opposite. It has guaranteed that the world keeps digging. And this is where the situation transforms from public relations crisis into genuine legal catastrophe. Because in a courtroom, you cannot simply shout privacy and walk away. In a courtroom, you have to produce evidence. This, right here, is the ultimate danger for the Sussexes. If Harry ever truly takes these claims to a high court, if he drags this war into a formal defamation suit, he opens himself up to the single most unforgiving process in the English legal system: discovery. In a legal battle over defamation or privacy regarding his own children's births, a judge has the power to demand the very evidence Harry has spent years burying: medical records, hospital admission logs, attending physician statements, and yes, if the circumstances warrant it, deoxyribonucleic acid samples. A courtroom does not care about your streaming deal. A courtroom does not care about your lifestyle brand. A courtroom does not care about your personal truth. A courtroom cares about one thing and one thing only: biological fact. The moment a judge orders a deoxyribonucleic acid test, the game is over, finished, ended. Absolutely no coming back from that verdict, whichever way it goes. And for a couple that has built an entire global empire on the meticulous control of their own narrative, the prospect of an impartial court system forcibly stripping that control from their hands must feel like the purest form of nightmare imaginable. It is the kryptonite to their brand. It is the one threat they cannot spin, cannot rebrand, cannot repackage into a Netflix docuseries. Because if the results of such a test ever confirm the rumors, even partially, even in a footnote, the exposed truth would erase the last remaining scraps of their public credibility overnight, not in a week, not in a news cycle. Overnight, every sponsor would quietly back away. Every speaking agency would stop returning calls. Every book deal still in negotiation would evaporate. The entire Montecito operation would collapse in on itself like a house built on a single card. But the pressure is not only coming from the media, and this is the part that should really make you sit up straight. The pressure is now coming from the very heart of the British government. In 2026, the discussion around the Titles Deprivation Act has reached a fever pitch in Westminster. Here is a little history lesson you will not hear on most news programs. The Titles Deprivation Act was originally enacted to strip royal titles from peers who had fought against Britain during the First World War. A statute written for a different century, for traitors, for those who took up arms against the crown. That ancient piece of legislation is now being dusted off, polished, and studied intently by members of Parliament who genuinely believe the Sussexes have brought the monarchy into such profound disrepute that they warrant consideration under it. With the Andrew precedent sitting in the recent legal history as a working blueprint, Parliament is now examining multiple avenues to ensure that royal titles are held only by those who continue to fulfill the constitutional requirements of those titles. There are growing, serious calls from both sides of the political aisle for a formal inquiry into the Sussex lineage. Let me stop and repeat that, because it is staggering. A formal parliamentary inquiry into the Sussex lineage. That phrase alone would have been unthinkable even 3 years ago, and yet here we are. This is not about being dismissive or cruel to a family. This is about the legal framework of an entire nation. If King Charles is ever forced to act, it will not be because he suddenly decided to hurt his younger son. It will be because the Prime Minister and the Cabinet have insisted, in writing, on the preservation of the integrity of the crown itself. The Sussexes are no longer a family problem to be managed quietly at Christmas dinner. The Sussexes have become a state problem to be managed in the chambers of Westminster. And that, as any historian will tell you, is a very different kind of problem. Let us be absolutely clear about what is quietly happening behind the scenes at the palace. The so-called men in gray, the senior advisors who have served the crown for decades, the quiet architects who actually run the day-to-day machinery of the monarchy, are playing an extraordinarily long game. They have watched Harry and Meghan burn bridges with the cold patience of generals observing enemy supply lines. They have calculated, ruthlessly and correctly, that the single best way to protect Prince William's future reign is to let the Sussex branch slowly wither on the vine. And in 2026, we are watching the final stages of that isolation strategy play out in real time. By refusing to invite the Sussexes to major state functions, by maintaining that cold silence during their anniversaries, by declining to acknowledge their birthdays or their children's milestones, the palace is effectively delisting them from the royal brand one quiet decision at a time. They are being treated increasingly like any other celebrity couple. And that right there is the single thing Harry and Meghan seem to fear more than anything else on the planet. Because without the royal prefix, their market value in the United States plummets through the floor. Without the royal prefix, they become just another wealthy couple in Montecito with a podcast no one is listening to and a jam label no one is buying. And while the legal walls are closing in from the east, the financial foundation is beginning to collapse from the west. In March of 2026, the news broke that Meghan Markle had effectively ended her partnership with Netflix for her lifestyle brand. The official line, the polished corporate statement, claimed the streaming giant was simply a poor fit for her new direction, that the products had outgrown the platform, that it was a graceful parting of ways. Industry insiders, however, tell a starkly different story. They describe a brand that was pushed out rather than pulled back, a project that was quietly unsupported for months before the official announcement, a flagship deal that had already been quietly defunded long before the press got the memo. The golden Netflix era of the Sussexes, which began with such breathless fanfare and that now infamous $100 million contract, is ending. Not with a trumpet blast, but with a whimper. And here is the cold mathematical reality. Without that constant influx of streaming cash, without those recurring mega deals, the cost of their 16-room Montecito mansion and their round-the-clock private security detail becomes a genuinely crushing financial weight. They are shifting, slowly but visibly, from global icons to content creators, from platinum-ranked celebrities to a struggling lifestyle duo trying to maintain a faux-royal lifestyle on a steadily dwindling budget. And the cracks are starting to show in places that public relations teams cannot paint over. Meghan's attempted pivot into the lifestyle space with American Riviera Orchard was supposed to be her comeback story. It was billed as the royal world's answer to Goop, a gleaming, sun-washed, high-end brand built on the implicit promise that buying a jar of jam or a box of candles could somehow draw you a little closer to the mystique of the Duchess. But by the summer of 2026, the brand has visibly struggled to find its footing. And the problem, truly, is not the products, it is not the packaging, it is not the marketing. The problem is existential. You cannot sell authenticity when the public is actively questioning the very foundation of your personal history. When your brand is built on high society connections and royal associations, but you have been effectively banned from high society and your royal associations are now under formal legal investigation, the products feel hollow in the hand. People do not want to buy jam from a duchess who might be stripped of her title by the time the jar is empty. They do not want to display candles branded with the residue of a dignity that may soon vanish from the official registers. The entire premise of the brand is eating itself from the inside out. The shocking reality, and please sit with this one, is that without the solid ground of royal legitimacy beneath their feet, Harry and Meghan are just another celebrity couple in a town absolutely overflowing with celebrity couples. Their untold stories have all been told. Their shocking revelations have all been revealed. Their interviews have all been granted. The public has heard every angle, every grievance, every carefully rehearsed tear. And the public, being the fickle, restless beast that it is now hungry for something new, something fresh, something that is not them. Which brings us inevitably back to the children. To Archie and Lilibet, the two entirely innocent parties in this massive, sprawling constitutional drama. Regardless of how they arrived in this world, regardless of the circumstances of their births, those two small human beings are now the unwilling centerpiece of a battle they never asked to fight. And the irony, the terrible, gut-wrenching irony, is that if the surrogacy speculation ever becomes officially documented, the fallout for those children would be catastrophic. They would become the first royals in modern history to have their titles stripped, not for any actions of their own, but because of the calculated avoidance and strategic silence of their parents. Think about the weight of that. Think about the cruelty of placing such a burden on a child who did nothing wrong. And think, for just a moment, about the bitter irony. Harry, of all people, the man who spent his entire adult life publicly railing against what he has called the cruel institution of the monarchy, has, through his own calculated actions, placed his own children in a position far more precarious, far more exposed, and far more psychologically damaging than he himself ever occupied. If Archie and Lilibet grow up one day to discover that their identities, their titles, their entire sense of self were part of a public relations strategy that ultimately backfired in the most humiliating way imaginable, the psychological wounds inside that family will cut deeper than any tabloid headline ever could. And as we move further into 2026, the Sussex empire of excuses is running out of fresh territory to colonize. One simple test, one swab, one 3-minute procedure in a private clinic. That is all it would take to end this entire saga in a single afternoon. Harry could, in theory, walk into any accredited laboratory on any Tuesday morning, provide the biological proof required, step back out into the sunshine, and silence Angela Levin and every other critic in the English-speaking world forever. The fact that he has not done so, the fact that he would rather sue, rage, hide, and threaten, speaks louder than any public relations statement his team will ever draft. Silence in the world of royalty does not read as dignity, it reads as guilt. And in 2026, the world has finally stopped being polite enough to look the other way. The mystery is hardening into a certainty in the minds of the public. And inside the cold stone walls of Buckingham Palace, the institution is quietly preparing for the day when the shadows finally have to meet the light. And when that day comes, there will be nowhere left to hide. The ultimate moral dilemma now rests squarely on the shoulders of one aging monarch, King Charles. A father, yes. A man who, despite everything, still loves his youngest son in that unspoken and complicated way that parents love the children who break their hearts the hardest. But he is not only a father, he is a king. And a king must love his country more than he loves his own kin. That is the cruel and beautiful arithmetic of the crown. And it is an arithmetic that has ended the reigns of better men than Charles III. Can he, in good conscience, allow children whose biological origins remain clouded in such calculated secrecy to remain in the line of succession? The coronation oath, that sacred and ancient vow he swore at Westminster Abbey, explicitly requires him to maintain the laws and customs of the land. If those laws clearly state that a child must be born of the body to inherit, and if Charles privately suspects that those laws have not been honored, then doing nothing is not a neutral act. Doing nothing is itself a breach of his own sworn duty. Let that sit with you for a second. Inaction, for a king, can itself be treason against the oath. In the final weeks of 2025, whispers emerged from well-placed palace sources suggesting that the king had finally, privately, formally asked the Sussex household for clarification regarding the births of his grandchildren. The response from Montecito, according to those same insiders, was a near total blackout, a stone wall, a refusal even to engage. And this is what tells you the truth of the situation. This suggests that the rift between father and son is no longer about what was said in a memoir. It is no longer about race. It is no longer about press coverage or perceived slights or who was seated where at a funeral. It is now about the very blood that justifies the Sussex family's continued existence inside the royal hierarchy. That is a wound that does not heal. If Parliament is ever truly forced to intervene in this matter, and the political momentum is increasingly pushing in that direction, the fallout will not simply scar Harry and Meghan personally. It has the potential to destabilize the entire institution of the monarchy itself. Imagine it for a moment. Court-ordered deoxyribonucleic acid tests, subpoenaed medical records, cross-examinations of attending physicians, royal mystique, the fragile, centuries-old aura that makes the monarchy what it is, dragged unceremoniously into the harsh fluorescent light of a modern courtroom. This is the absolute nightmare scenario for King Charles, a man who, in the twilight of his reign and the shadow of his own ongoing health challenges, simply wanted to rule in quiet dignity during his final years on the throne. But the Sussexes, through their choices, through their silence, through their calculated refusal to play by ancient rules, have made that dignity an impossibility. They have taken what could have been a private family conversation over tea and transformed it into a constitutional fault line visible from outer space. And now the entire world is sitting on the edge of its seat, waiting for the ground to shift. Here is what is certain. The golden couple of 2020, the one that headlined magazines, the one that danced through Oprah interviews like movie stars, the one that promised a modern reimagining of royalty, is now a distant, fading memory. The Montecito Royals of 2026 are a couple at the very edge of a cliff, fighting a war they may have already quietly lost. And the longer the Sussexes continue to dodge transparency, the more rapidly the whispers of illegitimacy will solidify into hardened public belief. This is not merely about two small children living in California. This is about whether the monarchy itself, a 1,000-year-old institution, can survive with heirs whose origins are openly doubted at every turn. And that shadow, make no mistake, does not just follow Meghan and Harry. That shadow follows the throne itself. Every time the Sussexes step out for another faux royal photo opportunity in Australia or Canada or some other Commonwealth outpost, they are not building a brand. They are, in fact, digging their own hole a few more inches deeper. The public, whatever else you might say about it, has an uncanny ability to sense when it is being sold a carefully rehearsed script. And right now, the Sussex script is riddled with plot holes so large you could drive a royal carriage through them. From the moon bump inconsistencies to the missing medical signatures, from the contradictory hospital statements to the invisible children, the accumulated evidence of a complete and coordinated cover-up is becoming simply too much for the mainstream press to continue ignoring. Even major American news outlets, organizations that once gave Harry and Meghan the softest of soft landings, are starting to pose the hard questions about transparency that British papers have been asking for years. Angela Levin's warning was not a personal grudge match. It was a floodlight switched on over an unraveling empire. If the truth finally emerges in open court, they will not simply lose face. They will lose everything. The remaining contracts will vanish, the honorary positions will evaporate, the titles will be revoked. And the prince will find himself a commoner in a land that has absolutely no use for a former member of royalty with no redeeming story left to tell. Meghan, a woman who explicitly wanted both wealth and fame, may discover that she ends up with neither of them if the born of the body requirement is not met. It is the ultimate cruel irony of their quest for freedom. They may have lost the one single thing that made them valuable to the world. Their brand was royal, their actions were celebrity, and in the great hierarchy of public fascination, one of those categories is permanent and eternal, and the other is gone in a breath. The psychological toll on Harry himself is also becoming visible and visibly heartbreaking to anyone who remembers the cheeky red-headed prince of the early 2000s. In his 2026 public appearances, that cheeky prince is simply gone, replaced by a man who looks perpetually cornered, perpetually defensive, perpetually exhausted. He blames the media for every crash in his relationships and his reputation, but what he stubbornly fails to see or refuses to admit is that he is the one who drove the car into the wall. He is the one who chose silence over sunlight. He is the one who chose lawsuits over answers. By tying the legitimacy of his own children to his ongoing personal war with the press, he has transformed his sons and daughter into unwilling collateral damage in his own private vendetta. He is a man who set out to protect his family from the cruelty of the institution. And yet, through his own actions, he has placed them at the center of the most consequential constitutional crisis of the 21st century. At the end of this storm, one truth remains standing, tall and immovable, like an old lighthouse on a pitch-black coast. The future of Archie and Lilibet is not just a private family issue to be sorted out over a Sunday phone call. It is a constitutional fault line, and it is waiting to split wide open. Monarchies live and die on bloodline. That has always been true. That is why kings rise, why queens reign, and why dynasties either survive for centuries or collapse in a generation. Without transparency, every royal title those two children hold becomes a question mark hanging over the entire house. And a monarchy built on question marks cannot stand indefinitely. Eventually, gravity wins. Meghan, a woman who once branded herself as the modern savior of the crown, the glamorous American who was supposedly going to drag the monarchy into a new shimmering future, now looks uncomfortably like the very person undermining it from within. Her silence is not noble. Her silence is not graceful. Her silence is calculated, and to the trained ear, it reeks of strategic avoidance. Harry, once the cheeky prince the entire world adored, the freckled war hero in an army uniform, has reduced himself through his own actions to a man raging at shadows, waving legal threats instead of simple answers. He does not look strong, he does not look protective, he looks scared. And let me tell you something, nothing is more dangerous to the stability of an ancient crown than a prince who seems afraid of the truth. Maybe that, at the end of the day, is precisely why they keep running. Because deep, deep down in the quiet hours of a California night, they know that a single moment of genuine exposure could erase the last remaining scraps of credibility they cling to so fiercely. They know that once the surrogacy seal is broken, once the truth is said aloud in a courtroom under oath, there is no going back. The royal dream would be exposed as nothing more than a sun-drenched Hollywood mirage. And the Prince of Hearts would be revealed as nothing more than a man who traded his birthright, his bloodline, his inheritance, and his dignity for a California sunset that is starting, in the slow motion of history, to look very dark indeed. The empire of excuses has finally reached its borders. There are no more countries to flee to. There are no more interviews to sell. There are no more stories left to tell. The walls of the maze are closing in. The lawyers are sharpening their pens. The palace is tightening its grip. And the truth, that cold, patient, indifferent thing, is finally preparing to walk into the room. And if you think this scandal is already jaw-dropping, if you think you have seen the full picture of what is unfolding behind the gilded doors of Buckingham Palace, I promise you, you have not even scratched the surface. On Star Spotlight, we have already broken down in explosive detail exactly how the king's calculated move against Prince Andrew in late 2025 was in fact a carefully staged trial run for how the palace now plans to handle the Sussex children's titles. Do not miss that video. It is the missing piece that shows just how deep this downfall truly goes and why the Andrew precedent is the real, final, unspoken endgame for Harry and Meghan. Click now before the next shoe drops and you will see exactly why their so-called new beginning in Australia is not a new chapter at all. It is the beginning of the final page. The crown is moving. The lawyers are ready. The institution is bracing. And the truth, after years of being buried under a mountain of public relations, is finally about to be revealed. Stay with us, because the next video picks up exactly where this one ends, and everything you just heard is only the doorway into a scandal so much bigger that it may redefine the monarchy for the next 100 years. Do not look away now. The real story starts the moment you click.